My dear friends, as a sequel to my previous presentation about the life of Olive Thomas, I present a very curious and true account of a fateful pact made by 6 young and promising girls of the Ziegfeld Follies. I have deliberately omitted the account of Olive, who, although one of the 6 who made the pact, I have already covered her life story in depth with my previous presentation.
Is it a sin? Is it a crime? Loving you, dear, like I do. If it's a crime, then I'm guilty. Guilty of dreaming of you. What can I do? What can I say? After I've taken the blame. You say you're through, you'll go your way, but I'll always feel just the same. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, loving you, dear, like I do. If it's a crime, then I'm guilty, guilty of loving you.
Back in 1916, 6 Follies beauties made a pact to meet exactly 20 years later in Churchill's restaurant. But when the day arrived, Churchill's was no more, and one lonely woman sat in the nearest cafe and drank a toast to the missing 5, every one of whom had met a tragic end. The date was June 2nd, 1916. The place was a dressing room in the old New Amsterdam Theatre in New York. The time was the first night of the call for chorus girls for Florence Ziegfeld's new edition of the Ziegfeld Follies. And the dramatis personae were 6 beautiful girls, 5 of them not yet out of their teens, each looking forward to a life of fame and luxury, which Broadway holds out as promised to all newcomers.
Happy and contented, now I found you. Happy and contented, all my life through. I'm so contented, since you loved me.
But there was one sour note in that scene of youthful ambition. It was struck by an old poverty-stricken nameless hag, who seemed to sound a warning note as she looked at the gay young girls with her tired, sad eyes. Glancing back at her, the girls decided that they would meet together 20 years from that night, at exactly 8 o'clock at Churchill's restaurant, to discuss what had happened to them in the interim.
What can prevent it? It had to be. Say I haven't dreamt it, this happiness. I was so tormented till you said yes.
We 6 ladies of the Ziegfeld Follies do hereby make this solemn vow that on June the 12th, 1936, 20 years from now, we'll all meet for dinner at Churchill's restaurant at Broadway and 49th Street. We'll compare notes about our last 20 years, and we'll tell each other tales of our colorful and oh so exciting adventures, our handsome husbands, our brilliant children, and our elegant homes. We'll reminisce about our Follies days, and we'll drink champagne toasts to lives well lived. Is it a deal, girls? Deal, they all said in unison.
Let's have a happy ending. Look at the sun trying to drive those shadows away. The longest lane will soon be bending. Flowers will bloom, spreading the good news over the way. Spring will soon come smiling down the lane. Hallelujah, I'm myself again. So long, the happy ending. Let us be gay and all the clouds will roll away.
Now the scene changes. The time is June the 12th, 1936, but the place is not Churchill's, which has vanished from the Gay White Way, but the Paradise, which is the nearest restaurant to where Churchill's once stood. And the dramatis personae are not the original 6, but only one, Catherine Lambert, the sole survivor of that hopeful sextet. As for the other 5, death had claimed them all, under strangely tragic circumstances. As she sat all alone at a table set for 6 in the Paradise restaurant, Catherine Lambert said, drinking a toast to her departed companions, "We were all famous, I guess, but death plays no favourites. We 6 were only girls in our teens, eager and bursting with ambition. 5 of us were sitting in a group, chatting, waiting for the call, when Olive Thomas, who had been in the Follies the preceding year, called us into her dressing room. There was the old hag, dirty and ragged. Years ago she too had been a showgirl, filled with great ambitions for herself. Now she was eking out a living, selling cold cream in the theatres.
Hold my hand, no matter what the weather, just you hold my hand. We'll walk through life together, for you'll find in me that kind of a friend who will see you through to the end.
I was very beautiful, my children, she said. As beautiful as any of you. I was in the Florodora show. That was more than 20 years ago.
We stared at her in horror as she took our nickels. And when she had gone, Olive whispered, "Isn't that tragic?" Someone said, shivering, "I wonder if that will happen to us." Olive drew herself up proudly and answered, "Not to me. It can never happen to any of us if we make up our minds. We all have beauty and talent. 20 years from now we'll all be famous and successful." It was then that we made our pact.
So if you'll hold my hand, we both shall walk more steadily, for understand, you hold my heart already in that dreamland.
But the fates planned an entirely different story. It is difficult to tell which one of the 5 had the saddest death, but certainly Fifi Alsop's was the most sordid. Born Effie Pope Hill in Washington, Georgia, Effie at the age of 17 had married Edward Brown Alsop, retired steel millionaire of Pittsburgh, then in his 70s. A few months later, things began happening. Fifi had to go to a sanatorium to recover, as she said, from too many kisses. Soon the news got out that Alsop had deeded $3 million worth of property to his sons by a former marriage, tying it up in such a way that his wife could not get any part of it either before or after his death. A reconciliation was attempted, but it was no go, and in 1915 the Alsops were divorced.
She was a girl in her teens. The time it was when there was spring in the air, and everyone knows what that means. Without any doubt he decided she was the one in his life. So he knelt on his right knee and twisted his left and asked her if she'd be his wife. Oh, he wooed her and wooed her and wooed her. She wouldn't say yes there and then, 'cause her mother had said she was much too young, so he wooed her and wooed her again.
Fifi went to Europe for a short rest. Then her money gave out completely. She worked for a week or two as a telephone operator in New York. She then took a job in the Ziegfeld Follies chorus in 1916, but she could not regain her strength. In 1918 she wrote an article called "I Am Old at 23", warning young girls never to marry old men merely because of flattery. Fifi went from bad to worse. The year Alsop died, 1922, Fifi, in a state of poverty, was taken from a cheap furnished room by police and placed in a Bellevue hospital, suffering from alcoholism and veronal poisoning. Time and time again, Fifi was released and sent back. Last year, she died and lay unclaimed on a Bellevue slab for days. It was on Thanksgiving Day in 1923 that Martha Mansfield, then just 23, was on location in San Antonio, Texas, with her leading man Wilfred Lytle. They were filming The Warrens of Virginia, a tale of Civil War days. Miss Mansfield had just stepped off the set into her automobile when a smoker's match accidentally fell into her clothes and immediately ignited her Civil War costume of billowy hoop skirts and flimsy ruffles. Lytle threw his overcoat around her in an effort to extinguish the flames. But although Miss Mansfield was rushed to the hospital immediately, the body burns were so severe that she died 24 hours later. Just as sudden a death, though a completely mysterious one, befell Bessie Chatterton Poole, daughter of a fine New England family, Follies girl, and for long years a member of Broadway's Fast Set. On October the 7th, 1928, Miss Poole was a guest at Tommy Gwynan's Chez Florence nightclub. All that was ever found out was that during the course of the evening, after Tommy had ordered her to leave the club, she went home to the rooms which she shared at the Dorset Hotel with Lillian Lorraine. Miss Lorraine called a doctor because Bessie was very ill. He had her moved to a private hospital where she died the next day. Chief Medical Examiner Norris said after the autopsy that death had been caused by heart disease. She had been drinking very heavily right before her death, but Norris refused to say more than heart disease. Lillian Lorraine did say that Bessie had had a dispute with two men at a nightclub, but the case was closed.
Don't say goodbye
somehow it's wrong. Clouds in the sky, I'm there for long. A blackbird can sing of good days in store, when spring will bring the flowers once more. Don't look so sad, just think of when good days we've had come round again. They're not far away, there's no need to sigh. We don't have to say goodbye.
The most recent and most vividly remembered death was that of handsome chic Lillian Tashman, wife of the screen star Edmund Lowe. She started her career in the legendary Ziegfeld Follies Revue, starring alongside several future stars including Marion Davies and Ina Claire. Renowned for her personal style, Tashman was one of Hollywood's leading clothes horses during the early 1930s. Tashman is alleged to have been romantically involved with Joan Crawford, Greta Garbo and Kay Francis, and to have gotten into physical altercations with Lupe Velez, Constance Bennett and Ilona Marlowe during her time as an actress in Hollywood. Charged with assault in 1931 after she beat actress Ilona Marlowe after catching her in husband Edmund Lowe's dressing room. Lillian first entered a New York hospital for surgery in 1932 for what was described in the press as an appendectomy. She was worried about her health. Tashman's friend Virginia Maxwell said after her death, "If the physicians knew she had a tumor, I don't believe they ever told her so." She continued to appear on screen despite her weakening physical health, and finished her final role in Frankie and Johnny just 2 weeks before her death of abdominal cancer. Lillian's funeral in 1934 nearly caused a riot. It attracted about 10,000 fans, mourners and curious onlookers to a rather small cemetery. There were several reported injuries, and a gravestone was toppled by the crowd.
I'm in harmony heaven when I'm with you. I'm in harmony heaven where skies are blue. Every love song that I can hear seem to be sung for you and me, dear. I'm in harmony heaven when I'm with you.
Only Catherine Lambert kept the long-awaited tryst. Who knows what became of her? The Paradise restaurant where Catherine sat alone for the reunion is also gone, closed in the late 30s. All the principal players lie silent in their graves. We observe through decades-clouded opera glasses their heartbreaking personal tragedies, saddened but also drawn by curious fascination. How destiny bestows kisses and gold dust before sudden, fickle indifference.
There's a harbor of dreams way out yonder, out where the purple meets the blue. Through that harbor of dreams let us wander and anchor where sweet dreams come.
Here are two more tragic victims of the Follies curse. Helen Walsh had been a young and hopeful member of the Ziegfeld Follies. She was born in August of 1905, some sources say 1908, in the Bronx, New York. Sadly, her father, Bernard Walsh, died when she was a teenager. Helen started working in a department store to help support her mother. Her lucky break came when she met actress Marilyn Miller, who encouraged her to go into show business. Helen had dark eyes and was known for having the most beautiful eyelashes in the theatrical world. She was asked to join the Ziegfeld Follies in 1931. Although she had become a success on the stage, she still lived at home with her mother and sister Marion. On July 26, 1931, she attended a party on singer Harry Rickman's yacht. Her Follies co-stars Virginia Biddle and Gladys Glad went with her.
In that haven beneath the palms, I'll find heaven in your loving arms, in that harbor of dreams way out yonder. We'll build a paradise for two.
As the yacht was being refueled, there was an explosion that caused a fire. Helen was found trapped under a burning mattress. Harry Rickman threw her into the water to put out the flames. She had been burned over 90% of her body. On the way to the hospital, she cried, "My face is my living. I hope it isn't burned." Tragically, she died from her injuries on July the 28th. She was only 25 years old. Hundreds of friends attended her funeral. Allen King is one of the more tragic cases of what Ziegfeld did to his ladies. To be in the Follies, you had to be a specific weight and body shape. Florence preferred the exact measurements of 36, 26, 38. In 1927, Allen King almost died after keeping herself on a near-starvation diet mixed with diet pills. She spent nearly 2 years at a sanatorium recovering, before leaving for New York to live with an aunt. Allen's desire to be 20 to 30 pounds less than optimum weight was fueled by her Broadway contract.
Gone is the romance and broken the vow. We used to be sweethearts, but what are we now? Happy-go-lucky you, and broken-hearted me. Man in the moon is as sad as can be. He looks down from heaven, and what does he see? Happy-go-lucky.
An excerpt from her contract. It is expressly made a part of this agreement, and is an essential part thereof, that if at any time you should, during the term of the said arrangement, increase in weight more than 16 pounds or decrease in weight more than 10 pounds, or let the dimensions of any part of your figure vary more than 1/2 inch from the following: weight 115 pounds, neck 12.5 inches, bust 34 inches, upper arms 11, lower arms 7.5, waist 26, hips 34, thigh 18, calf 12, ankle 3.5. Then, and in that event, we shall have the right to cancel this contract upon giving you 1 week's notice. Arlene jumped out of her aunt's 5-story window and survived the fall with broken limbs and a fractured skull. A day or so later her health took a turn for the worse. and she passed away on March the 31st, 1930. Arlene was 31 years old. She left a note behind stating that she would never return to Broadway again.
The end has come, my heart is numb. 'Twas like a bolt from the blue sky above. I can't believe it, but you are gone, darling, and here lies love. The sky is dark, I hear a lark. He sounds as sad as a mournful dove. The dew appears like the tears of dawn, darling, for here lies love. All my dreams lost beyond recall, dreams of spring blasted in the fall. You gave lips, you gave arms, I gave all. I ought to cry, my eyes are dry. There's only one thing I'm conscious of. I only know that I can't go on, darling, for here lies love.
Well, my dears, I hope you're still with me, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. As always, I stumbled upon this pact that the Ziegfeld Follies girls made all those decades ago when I was doing the Olive Thomas case, of course. You often find when you go along these side tracks, you'll find other stories connected, and this was one of them. So we all know what happened to Olive Thomas in the last episode. Fifi Alsop, what happened there? Such a young girl. To destroy her health in such a manner in such a short time, what the hell happened? And what did she mean when she was admitted to a sanatorium because of too many kisses? Is that an old-fashioned term of saying she had a venereal disease? Or was she having some sort of emotional breakdown? What do you think? Very sad, actually. Veronal poisoning. I'd never heard of it before. Apparently it's some sort of hypnotic barbiturate, which was discovered in 1903 and was quite common back then, and I guess I read the description of its uses, it was used by people to help them get to sleep at night. Well, you got my voice. You don't need that. Many people tell me that my voice helps to aid sleep, so you don't need. The pharmaceutical companies would hate me, wouldn't they? So yeah, she took this Veronal, I won't keep saying poisoning, Veronal, over continued use can lead to fatal consequences, as we've seen with Fifi. So it was bad enough, the alcohol, but she was combining it with this Veronal, which, it's going to kill anybody. So that is absolutely tragic. And then we have Martha Mansfield. How horrible. What a horrible death. You know, they didn't have flame retardant clothes back then. So if she's wearing something with, billowy frills, etc., someone throws a match near that, and everyone smoked back then. What a terrible thing. God, I just can't even imagine it. And who do we have next? Yes, Bessie Chatterton Poole, the one that went to the Cher Florence nightclub, of which I tried to have a look, couldn't find any information on that. Seems to have been lost to history. What went on there? got into an argument? Did it end up as a physical altercation and someone's belted her a whack around the head? Because that's a very suspicious death, isn't it? It seems like the coroner covered it up. Was this Tommy Guinan or whatever his name was? Was he some sort of mobster? Did he put the heavies on the coroner for him to close the case very quickly? That is a strange one. Let me know what you think about that. And then we have Lillian Tashman, really beautiful looking girl, very tragic. Well, cancer can take anyone at any age. It's just sad. It's just sad. And moving on, they were the original, allegedly, the original 6 people of that pact. And the ones I mentioned at the end as an addendum, what was her name again? God, I have to look in it. Let me just check. Yes, the Helen Walsh. The one that was caught under a burning mattress on a burning, exploding yacht. I don't know, something seems a bit strange there to me. Perhaps she did cover herself in a mattress to try and, escape the flames. Why didn't she try to attempt to escape from the yacht instead of hiding under a mattress? I'm just thinking, did somebody do something to that poor girl and deliberately light the fire and put this burning mattress over her, which probably ignited the whole yacht? That's a very strange one, isn't it? There was a lot of drugs and drinks going on back with these high set, or what would they call not the jet set, people who the fast set. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, old brain. Yeah. So I'm a bit worried about that one. And then the last case is Aline King. Terrible. What a tremendous amount of pressure to be under, especially if you have a tendency to gain weight. If that is part of your genetics. It's very, very difficult, especially as you get a bit older, to try and stave that weight off. And it must have been torturous trying to keep herself. And she was, I saw in the newspaper account there, you can read it there, where it says she was slugging these pills down. These, they had a specific name for them, very quaint name, but they're basically, what are they, like Benzedrine pills to, speed. It's speed. I know I really had a long go at speed when I was young, and it really does play havoc with your emotional state. So, prolonged and overdoing it. So I can understand that she would be an absolute wreck, and realizing that basically her career was over. All very sad. To get to a bit of a lighter note, so I'm looking at this newspaper article. I'll put the top part of it on the screen now. This is from newspapers.com. They've saved this page from 1936. So the lady sitting there, this Catherine Lambert. I had a good look. You can have a look for yourself. Her name associated with Ziegfeld Follies, 1916. I cannot find it anywhere. The only times you'll see her name mentioned is in association with this newspaper clipping that other people have. There's a few other people who have made note of this pact. And I can't find any record of her being a Ziegfeld Follies girl. So my suspicion is that the newspaper just decided to run a story. I haven't had a good look, admittedly, but I'm wondering whether there ever was a pact. Did the newspaper decide, okay, let's just make a story up about these young Follies girls who all died tragically and pretend there was a pact? It's quite possible, and they've just got this sort of sit-in, this Catherine Lambert, to pretend that she was the last one in that pact. So it's a good story. It's interesting enough. It made me make a video about it, but I'm wondering whether they actually did make a pact. If anyone else can find any evidence before this article that they had made a pact, I would be interested to know. I've just got my suspicion hackles up on that. Because let's face it, newspapers back then were very light on the truth. There was a lot of stuff that they just made up, and you couldn't go sort of fact-checking by yourself back then. There wasn't any internet, so there was a lot of stuff that was printed that was totally untrue. It's a good story, though. I must admit, I must clap the newspaper editor on the back if it is made up for coming up with that one, because it certainly impressed me. Yeah, it must have been a hard life, really. Probably exciting and glamorous to begin with, being a Ziegfeld Folly girl. But, such contracts, and you were basically treated like goods and chattel. That's all you were. They insured your life if they thought you were good enough, but you were certainly to be used and then discarded when you were no longer of any use. There really wasn't that many who went on to have careers after the Ziegfeld Follies. That was basically it. Has it changed much today? Not really. Then and now, the hopeful stars who flock to Hollywood, they're relying on their good looks mostly. That's what's being looked for. I mean, there are a few old established actors, like Anthony Hopkins, Morgan Freeman, and there's others, the established ones, but Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, etc. But a lot of it's the young hopefuls. They have to rely on their looks. But thank goodness the casting couch is a thing of history. At least I hope it is, since the Harvey Weinstein affair. I think that's over at least. But still, it does rely. Hollywood relies on beauty. That's what their standard is, isn't it? The pearly white teeth and the perfect smile. And that's not to say, of course, that some of the younger actors don't have talent. Some of them really are exceptionally talented. Jennifer Lawrence, I really like her. I think she's great. I mean, she's made a whackload of money out of her acting, so good on her. Keanu Reeves, I like Keanu. Always liked him. He doesn't seem to change much. His character's pretty much Keanu, isn't it? But you got to love him. There are quite a few others. I don't want to sort of put them all in the same kettle and say they're just relying on their looks, because that would not be true. That would be far from the truth. But I'm not sure if it's changed at all, really. When you're no longer sort of... And I guess that's why so many of these celebrities resort to plastic surgery with quite often disastrous consequences. Some of them look really grotesque afterwards. God knows why they would do that. Which is why a lot of the British actors, you see, they look pretty natural. They got the wrinkles, the hair's falling out. I like that. I don't like this sort of pumped up artificial. I remember years ago when Meg Ryan, and I really had a crush on Meg Ryan when I was young, and then she got those ridiculous fish lips. I thought, what the hell have you done? She had such a natural beauty, and she went and did that. But anyway, I'm blathering on. Shall we make a pact? In 20 years' time, we shall all return to my Patreon channel, if it still exists, and see how many of us are left, if any. If maybe I'm not here. Quite possibly I'm not here. But I'll be looking down. If there's one sole person like Catherine Lambert, if there's one sole person who turns up, or tries to turn up, I will know from the spirit world, and I shall salute you from yonder. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with a blooper. This was my concentrated effort to get the sentence out, alcohol and veronal poisoning. Now I can say it effortlessly, but then, it's like when you get the giggles, you can't really stop it. I've seen actors when they get the giggles, when they're doing a particular take, they just can't get through it without laughing. That's what it gets like. It really is quite torturous. Sometimes you think you're not going to get that sentence out. It gets that desperate. So I will love you and leave you with that, my dear ones. Take care, God bless, and see you next time. Suffering from alcoholism and veronal. Suffering from alcoholism and ah dear. Suffering from alcoholism and I can't get that word. Oh my goodness, I'm tired too. Here we go. Suffering from alcoholism and veronal poisoning. Suffering of... I feel like Bugs Bunny. Suffering from alcoholism and Suffering from alcoholism and veronal poisoning. Nearly there. Suffering from alcoholism and veronal... Oh, can I just change it for some other poison? Suffering from alcoholism and veronal poisoning.